Hello, welcome to the Private Practice Owners Club. I'm your host, Adam Robin. Today, special guest, first time. Spencer, have we done this before?
So I did one with Nathan before the Private Practice Owners Club conference in October.
Yeah, yeah. Well, some of you may have heard me talk about Spencer Shoemaker. Um, I'll do a quick little recap on who Spencer is to me. We went to PT school together, sat right behind me, back behind me and to the right. I think you were
Hmm.
to the right. So you were kind of looking at my right ear for the whole PT school.
Correct.
And yeah, so that's kind of how we met. And then right after school, we stayed connected because you kind of started an entrepreneur journey and we started talking about business and that kind of grew into kind of what it is today. Now you're super successful as a business owner and we're partners in a few companies. And I just value the way that you think and that you approach things. I learn a lot from you, and I figured people who listen to this could learn a lot from you too. So thought it would be awesome to just kind of have you on and kind of just like pick your brain a little bit, talk a little bit about life, leadership, some of the lessons you're learning, and add some value to the audience. That's
Yeah,
sound good?
for sure. I can do that.
What's been new for you, man? I'd love to hear, and we'll kind of just keep this conversational, but I'd love to hear, you know, we're approaching the end of Q1, the last sprint at Q1, right? So like
Yeah.
I've been talking to a lot of owners and it seems like this is where momentum usually should start to be kicking in, right? Because you're kind of getting through that 1 year hump. You should have some plans, a little bit of vision for the year. You should be positioning yourself to for the big push, right? And so as you think about where you are in your companies and the lessons maybe that you've brought with you from 2025, I'd love to hear kind of like what you're focused on right now and like how you're approaching the problems you're solving.
Thanks for having me on, first of all. I
For
appreciate
sure.
it. And I repeat what you said. I get a lot of value out of the things, just even sitting on one-on-one meetings with you every week, some of the things that you think of and bring up and how your brain operates. It challenges me in a great way
Hmm.
to not only in that business, but also other businesses. So I think the world of you as well. So from 2025, I think that, and every business owner probably goes into this where you start off and you don't really know what you're doing. So you try to learn a little bit about everything, figure out what really fills your cup. And so I think over the last probably a little bit more than a year, the thing that has continuously filled my cup has been developing a team and
Mm.
developing team and at some point you become a business owner and you think you have to be the most important person in the room. You think you have to answer every question. You're not important unless you're the one that people come to. And there comes this mountaintop where you start to work down the other side of that, where you're like, I'm exhausted every week, not only for running my company, but also from having to answer every question inside of it. So, I mean, obviously you start off with your policies and procedures, and that gets a lot of questions off your plate. But some point in there, you realize there's a lot of people around you that are working really hard, and you realize it's for you. They're working hard for themselves, but they're also working really hard for you because they see the time and effort that you put into it. They see your vision, they want to get behind your vision, and they want to grow with you. So, not everybody is in it for themselves. A lot of people value a team approach, and the strength of the team is what kind of leads the way. So, I think over the last 12 months in each business that I'm in, kind of took a step back from wanting to be the guy that everybody came
Hmm.
to and really start to hone in my team and build them, give them some opportunity to make mistakes. Because honestly, that's when I learn the most is when I make some mistakes. So people aren't really going to learn a whole lot of life or business lessons if they're not able to make some of those mistakes on their own. So taking a step back from the PT business I'm in, it was okay, these are the things that I'm good at. These are the things that I'm passionate about. And it's not like I'm trying to offload the things that I'm not passionate about. It's not like, oh, this exhausts me, so you can have it. Because I think the first issue that you can have is when you start delegating tasks and the people know that you're only delegating it because you don't want to do it. So
Mm.
I think they feel that, and that's not so empowering, in my opinion. People want to feel empowered that you see value in them and how they view business and how they view certain aspects in a different way than you would, and you're empowering them to make that decision. And to them, it then feels because they're better at it than you are, not because it's not something I want to do. So, took a lot of self-reflection. It took a lot of like swallowing some pride on, I don't want to be this guy anymore. I want to develop a team. I want to have a strong team. I want to have a great work-life balance, to then identifying who those teammates are. And it's really not that hard. I mean, I know this is conversational, so I don't want to take over the whole thing, but I mean, what are you trying to identify when, because I mean, you view that as well. You had to answer every single question inside of your business. You'd never get a work day done.
Mhm.
So, what are you looking for inside of that? What are you looking for in empowering your team? I mean, in the businesses that we're in together, I think I've told you this before. It's easy to have like the easy conversations and the conversations that like, you're really good at this and this is why I want you to take it on. It's really hard to have the conversations where you have to tell somebody why they're not meeting the standard.
Mhm.
And to me, I feel like you have a superpower inside of that to keep it. It's not personable at all. Let's keep it objective. Let's protect the business. So to ask, I mean, we can go a little bit farther into what I'm looking at from 25 to 26, but I think that the viewers would get a lot of value out of how you approach conversations like that.
Sure. Yeah, I love how you mentioned developing a team. I love doing that too. There's challenges that come with that.
Yeah.
And I think I've been really thinking a lot about like business and practice owners and how to serve them and how to understand them, right? And what I'm learning more recently is like, how do I make things easier? How do I make things simpler? Right? Because I used to build systems that were like complicated and exact and like needed to cover every single detail. And I ended up overwhelming my team too much. And I ended up causing them to be distracted and lose sight of the main purpose of the thing. Right. And so really I've been focusing on like, how do I make it easier? How do I make it just like push the button? You know what I mean? Like
Right.
push the button. So and um and so part of the part of the thing that I look for in team members is I think the challenges to building a team really I think really depends on like the leader that's in the room. So for instance, like my leadership style is going to be different than yours. Some people are going to kind of gravitate to my approach. It doesn't mean it's right or wrong, it just means it is. We can argue if it's effective or not, and you're going to do it a different way, right? You're going to
Mhm.
lead your team a different way with a certain set of values and principles that are important to you. It doesn't mean it's right or wrong. It just means it is. And that's going to create its own set of strengths and weaknesses. But for me personally, I look at number one, are they willing to be led? That's a big thing for me. Are you willing to be led? And I think that, you know, kind of going back, it's mentioned you've kind of experienced this transformation from I'm the important person to I'm not the important person. And think that that's important. That's a piece of it. But also, I think I haven't had a ton of success with not being the person who is really clear on what the outcome is needs to be, that understands what the standard is. And it doesn't necessarily mean I have to be important, but I do have to be that person that's like, this is the standard, right? You know what I mean?
Right.
I have to be the
Right.
enforcer of that,
That's right.
And so like maybe the next question is like, how do you balance that where it's like, I'm not important, but I am going to step in whenever the standard is not met. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for
How
sure.
do you keep that distance
For sure.
that's needed to be effective at that?
So to answer that question, I think that I'll still lean towards, I think there's different levels of leadership, of course. So I've got my core group of leadership team. And for me, it starts with accountability. Like I have to be willing to hold people accountable.
Yes.
And so there's a ton of friends and, you know, when you're going to hire, you typically there's two types of people you can hire. You can, if I'm trying to if I'm trying to start pelvic health per se, I can either go hire somebody that has a ton of experience inside of pelvic health and has done it their way or another company's way for a long time, or I can go hire someone with not much experience and I can train them how I would like for it to be done. A lot of people think that if they hire that first person who has a ton of experience, they can just kind of step back.
Totally.
And
I
I
made that
think that
mistake
that's a
too.
problem because they may be a great pelvic health therapist, but that doesn't mean that they're following the same standards of your company and they don't have the
Hmm.
same
Hmm.
values of your company. So they have the same personal standards as a treating therapist, but they don't have the same approach and
Hmm.
all the things that you would want in your business. So it could be argued. I mean, sometimes it's easier to hire that person with experience and start a program, but honestly, I think the most important thing is to find somebody that you align with and that your business aligns with the most and grow from there, whether they have experience or they don't. So I think to answer your question, I've got to start with being able to hold my people accountable when they're not willing or they're not reaching that standard that you're talking about.
Hmm.
I think that the problem that a lot of business owners will run into is like, well, that's not quite the standard, but it's good enough. We're almost
Hmm.
getting the job
Or I
done.
don't know what the standard is.
Right. We haven't really completed our vision yet to know what a
Right.
success looks like. And so I talk about a couple calls that we've had in the businesses that we're together in. I like when you end a call with what seems like a success to you, because then you really know what they're thinking.
Hmm.
And then you
Hmm.
typically say, well, what looks like a success to me is this. What is something that how do we both win? How does
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
business win?
Hmm.
So when you asked that question just a second ago, the answer that comes to mind is accountability. You have
Hmm.
to be willing to have those tough conversations and hold people accountable, even when they're your friends. And
Hmm.
I mean, I'll speak on a subject that I had today. One of the issues that we're running into inside of our therapy company is went through a little bit of a went through a little bit of a couple of our providers were not credentialed. Um,
Hmm.
when we figured that out, we're like, okay, we're going to keep seeing these patients, but we're going to get credentialed, and then we went through this phase of we were essentially treating a few patients for free. And I'm not
Hmm.
saying that's the best policy. I'm not saying it's the worst policy, but it's what we chose to do.
Sure.
So when you run, there's certain reports you can run, and when you run this one report inside of we use Raintree, it's called an auth exception report, authorization exception report. It basically gives you the total amount of how much we gave away in treatment per se.
Ouch.
So we got through the credentialing hiccup, and we had a couple therapists that were he'll listen to this and he'll laugh as I'm talking about it because we talked about it today, and you know him. He's one of the therapists that we went to school with.
Hmm.
So we had a lot of patients will come in and they'll have had surgery and we'll treat them for a visit. We'll do the eval, and then if they have certain insurance, their authorization takes a while. Well, for a great therapist, you're like, okay, well, I need to get them in. I don't need them to scar over. I don't need them to, I need to go ahead and start treating them.
Hmm.
So there was a certain way inside of Raintree that you can set the note type as different. It was called a P dash note. Well, he had figured out how to put them as a placeholder. He could schedule them as a P dash note. And so they wouldn't get lost in the shuffle, but they still had a placeholder on the schedule, even when they didn't have auth. Well, you'd look up and, if we're behind on auths, we've been treating this patient for free for 3 weeks.
Hmm.
And so today I walked into the office and I'm like, hey guys, what are some things that we can do? What are some systems that we can implement that this does not happen again? And he kind of like eased around like he knew what I was talking about. And I'm like, how do we stop using the P dash note? And he just kind of smiled and he's like, well, I mean, the only reason I'm using it is because I want the patient to get treatment. I'm like, we don't disagree about that. Also want the patient to get treatment, and insurance is not fair sometimes. Like, I get it. But if you're looking at it from my point of view, you're seeing them for free and it's not affecting you. You're still getting paid. As the business, which we have to protect first, I am now paying you to see a patient for free. So I am losing money on this deal, which I didn't get in business to make money, but I did not get in business to lose money either.
Hmm.
It's one of my best friends. It's one of my best friends that I just had to have an accountability, just a quick 2 minute conversation with. And I think that if you have a mutual respect for each other, those conversations are not that difficult. It's like, I
Mhm.
see what you're saying, or I can see his point, he can see mine. We agree.
Mhm.
We can agree to disagree. We typically don't do that. Typically, there's some sort of silver lining, but you have to be able to have the accountability conversation so that they can see your point of view as well. If I'd have just walked in and said, "Hey, stop doing that,"
Sure.
I mean, that's not very, I'm not saying you have to give a why every time, but that was an easy 2 minute conversation on them understanding from a business perspective why we can't. And so I think that if you really dial it back to what a lot of issues in business are, it's that. There's a lot of people out there that don't want to hurt their friends' feelings. They don't want to hold people accountable. And there's, certain instances inside of a business and those start stacking up and you're not willing to really hold any of them accountable. It's a recipe for disaster. So I think that starting off with my core group, I have to be willing to hold them accountable. And at some point, that has to drip down from my leadership team to the people that are underneath them. They have to be able to hold their level accountable as well. So I think that's probably one of the most important things inside of business is to be able to and willing to hold people accountable, even if the conversations are tough.
I love how you I love how you approach that conversation, right? Because have you ever read the book Crucial Conversations?
Yes. Hmm.
Pretty good book. And I don't remember exactly I don't remember every single part of it, but one of the keys to success with those hard conversations is your ability to create some type of area of common ground,
Hmm.
right? And usually that common ground in my experience is the value or the principle in which we're going to choose to operate with in, right? And in your case, you were able to define that with some language that was able to be easily understood and agreed upon with this person, which
Right.
was here, let's zoom out. Here's the situation, right? And here's what's really happening. And here's this is the piece that's the big problem. Does that make sense? Yeah. So let's talk about fixing that, right?
Mhm.
So you were able to create that thing that was a separate from you, and it became a problem that you could attack together. Does that make
Right.
sense?
That's right.
And I feel like that is so important when that's important to leadership and influence, right? Is to be able to create that agreement around that principle, right? And if you can create these principles of operation throughout the business that you're going to hold true to, and you can create agreement on those principles, then you got a team that's bought in, and you can distill that down into a value. I'm sure that there's like a core value that was relevant that you could probably put a word to that. But I feel like that's really what's the foundation of creating that buy-in with the
Right.
team, you know? So
I
I
think,
think to piggyback off that, like I think leadership is obviously starts with understanding who you are and the values and principles in which you believe in and you choose to operate within, and working on becoming the person who can model that standard so that you can start actually like building some trust with yourself. Then that unlocks your ability to kind of like hold your team accountable to that standard because you've been the person that can do it. Does that make sense?
that's right.
And so I think leading yourself is key, but then I think that maybe goes back to my point in the beginning, which was making sure you have a team that's willing to be led,
Right.
right? And
Right.
that, so anyway, did you have something to add there?
Well, I think when you strip it down to the bare bones of it, I mean, it's important who you hire. And they have to know that you're in their corner. You want them to succeed, and you have to know that they're in your corner. And we're collectively working towards the same thing. And if it's an insurance issue, that issue is not going to get in between us. That's an issue that we both have to work around. We both have to work around that to get to our common goal, which is first and foremost, getting the patient seen with quality care.
Mhm.
Second, make sure that we're getting paid from an insurance provider. And I think that if you questioned any of the team that's around me, those are our goals. Like, I want the patient to be taken care of, the company to be protected, and the employee to be paid for,
To be
and there to be
supported.
an even exchange in your words. I think that you
Mhm.
use a good bit. There to be an even exchange between the company and the employee. Like we are all working towards the same thing. We want this to be fair. We want the company to be protected. So I think that if they know that deep down and know that deep down, everybody's willing to come up with a resolution.
I just had this revelation because I think you just answered my question, which was my original question was how do you create that distance? How do you become the not important person in the room? Right. And in my mind, I thought typically what we do in the beginning, and I still fall into this trap. I think we all do. We want to get in there and we want to own the thing. We want to be the person to solve the problem, right? We want to own the process and we want to micromanage the whole thing. Especially in the beginning, like we've had some startups recently that have been hard and we've had to like be a little more hands-on, right? But the thing that allows you to learn to let go, part of the thing is you being very clear on what the standard is. And number two, having the courage to hold that standard no matter what. Nothing can rock that standard. Because if you can hold that with a level of safety, that is the thing that gives you the confidence to let go of the details. Does that make sense?
I agree.
Right.
Well, I
And
think that to add on to that, I mean, I think you said it like you're worried about every detail you overwhelm your team. But truly, there's no way that one person can worry about every single detail. So you're figuring out what's important for you and what's a win for you. But truly, if you can enlighten your team and you can empower your team, they're going to figure out way more details than we even had capacity
totally.
to get to in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome, man. So, okay, learning how to create those principles that you want to, building the language that describes them cleanly, right?
Hmm.
And then having the courage to, hey, you know what? Like, I'm going to stand behind this no matter who believes
Right.
me or not, you know, and then having the courage to hold tight to that standard will unlock growth. But that's not it because there's more to it than just that, right?
Right.
Part of the thing that I get in trouble with is when things go wrong. Like everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the face, right?
Mhm.
Me being, and you know this about me, like I tend to worry a little more than you. I tend to get a little restless and I get antsy when things aren't clicking at the highest level possible, right? And that could be money's tight. That could be somebody on the team's got an attitude and I don't like it. Or it could be the clients are upset. We got to, God, I've got to get the clients better. You know what I mean? And I have this compelling urge to jump in and want to just fix it
Mhm.
now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is a problem. And that's disruptive. And I know that, but it's still hard to fight that. So my question for you is like, do you experience a version of that? And like, or are there other like triggers that make you really want to jump in? And like, how do you make sure that you handle those situations appropriately?
I think that my struggle is um, I feel like I take things personally too much. To talk more about that, like, I think for me, like, I want to create a standard and I want to create some systems that it's easy to follow. And I'd love it if 70% of everybody's daily job was step by step. This is how we complete it. But then that last 30% in my brain, I'm like, okay, as an employee or as a patient, I have taken care of you at every single turn. Like everywhere that I can, if there's a 50-50, you win. And
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
going to
yeah,
take the brunt.
yeah, yeah.
So there comes a point in time where in that 30% of the things that aren't inside the systems or the policy or procedure, you have a standard that you would hope that they would follow. They would fall under that. And when there's certain times that people kind of go rogue or they do something more self-serving than beneficial for the company,
Mhm.
it really bothers me. Like
Yeah.
it. So I think that the word that you've used in the past is when people challenge certain things, when people challenge me on certain things.
They want to challenge the principle. They want to challenge the whatever framework that the agreement was already made, and now we're
That's
breaking
right.
them. We're breaking the rules,
That's
right?
right. And so you try to, for me, and maybe this is selfish, but I try to surround myself with people that think like I do or
Sure.
care like I do. And I know that everybody's not always going to match that same. They're not going to think exactly the same. I'm not saying they care less, but they care differently.
Hmm.
And I feel like my struggle is sometimes I take that personally because then I'm like, well, now I have to step in and I have to be the bad guy. And I feel like every single time that something like this has come up, I'm always the good guy. I'm always the one that moves to the side and you win.
Mm.
And the moment of time that I ask you to do that for the company, you don't, it really bothers me. And so I think that's probably my biggest struggle inside of business, like trying really hard not to take things personally, because at the end of the day, everybody works to provide for their family and to provide for themselves. That's why you work.
Totally.
If 100% of us did not have to work, chances are nobody would work.
Hmm.
Um, but I think that you probably get to where you are in like ownership and stuff like that because you truly care about your business and the product, but also the people around you and you hope and expect that would be reciprocated most of
Yeah.
the time. And when it doesn't feel reciprocated, whether they didn't mean it personally or not, sometimes I'll jump to that conclusion and I get like defensive. Even when people mean well, sometimes my brain will go to worst case scenario, and that's a
Totally.
struggle.
So how do you see that disrupting your leadership, and how do you what safety nets do you put in place to make sure that that doesn't compromise your judgment?
I think that for me, like typically a conversation pretty quick after, because I'm not one, I may sleep on it for the night, but I'm about to talk about it.
Good. I like that.
And then I feel like I can get the emotion down and I can have a calm conversation. But typically, after a conversation, I can see their point of view and I can explain my point of view, and we
Hmm.
see each other's side. And it's like, okay, I was really jumping to a conclusion there. But sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I don't jump to a conclusion. And at that point, when I realize that maybe we're not as connected, like our leadership team isn't as connected on various things, I feel like myself separating just a little bit. Like
Mm.
I don't quite trust you with everything that I once did as much. And maybe that's not good. I feel like that's my protective mechanism. So to answer your question, the things that I put in place is typically follow up with a conversation. You know, typically those are not going to be a text conversation. It's going to be I'm going to pick up the phone and call, or I'm going to try to hit you in person if
Yeah.
I can, because for me, hearing the emotion in someone's voice, hearing the tone in someone's voice, it does a lot for me. You can mistake text all the time, like they
Yeah.
put a period instead of an exclamation mark, like well they're mad.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah,
so I
yeah.
feel like just being able to feel that between them, a conversation goes a long way with
Mhm.
calming down those triggers or those issues. But, at the end of the day, once you kind of work through that scenario that you weren't as pleased with, for me, if it's something that could come up again, it's time to create a policy. I don't want this to happen again.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's operationalize that.
That's right. That's
Totally.
right.
So like so my default is fear, worry. And so fear and worry that makes you irrational, right?
All
And
right.
so like I seek control over the thing,
Mhm.
and that somehow if I can control it, I won't have to worry about it, right?
I'm the same
I can
way.
put my finger on it, right?
Right.
Which is not good for
Right.
scale, right? So I try to build, I try to systemize my fears. How can I systemize the control around my fears and tighten those things up? And here's the thing, usually when I do that, it makes things simpler and clearer for my team.
Yep.
And I find myself being able to let go a little bit more. And I have me personally, like I'm in a season right now where I'm trying to learn how to own that, right? And that is my strategy to basically lead myself a little bit better.
Right.
Another thing that's really helped me, Spencer, is having some advisors around me, advisors and mentors
Mhm.
who know you at that level and who know the way you think and know your weaknesses
Mhm.
and know your blind spots because we
Mhm.
all have them. And a lot of times there are people on your team who been with you since the beginning, right? That know all the good, the bad, and ugly, right? A lot of times I'll sit them down and I'll just say, like, hey, I'm thinking through this thing and here's the decision I'm considering. Would you be open to giving me some critical feedback around that? Like, what am I missing? Is this me being a good leader or am I missing something? and creating a relationship with at least a handful of people on
Right.
your team who you give permission to actually give you some critical feedback.
Right.
I learn a lot from those things. I learn
Yeah,
a
for
lot
sure.
from those, and it helps me too.
Yeah.
So
That's great.
the other thing that I loved what you mentioned was the communication standard. I teach my team this all the time. All the time. There are levels of effective communication, right? Not everything should be an email.
Right. You're right.
In fact, email is probably the lowest level. It's like email, then maybe text. I don't know if text is, they're tied neck and neck.
Right. Right.
The next thing is probably phone call.
Hmm.
After that, Zoom call. After that, in person.
That's right.
And if there are emotional or non-productive communication within those channels, your job is to move it up the chain
Right.
to seek the solution,
You're
right?
right.
So I try to teach my team that, like, that was not an email thing, right? That was a call thing. You
Right.
got to own that. You know what I
That's right.
mean? So I think that's a lesson that I've learned too,
For
is
sure.
creating those communication channels.
For sure. Yeah.
Um, you doing okay on time?
Yeah. I'm good.
Okay. Um, so here's another question I have for you. Let's say you have a team member or group of people around you who are working hard and they want to do good. They want to do a good job, but they're just not getting the outcome. It's not good enough, right? I'm learning this lesson because here's the thing. There's not a lot of people in this world that are going to work as hard as you and I. Fair?
Right.
You know what I
True.
mean? And so my default is always to think, well, they're just not working hard enough. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like that's my immature default, which sometimes is the case. Sometimes people need a
Right.
little motivation, but it's not the only thing holding people back. Sometimes
Right.
they just don't know. They don't have the skill, right?
Right.
How do you, how do you, what is your strategy on being a little bit more diagnostic around underperformance? And how do you handle that? Like, because I'm the type of person that wants it done now.
Right.
I have to have patience and understand like this is going to take 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, right? So how do you do that?
That's a good question. I think that for me, one of the qualities that I cling to as a leader the most is to figure out what other people enjoy doing, what they're passionate about, what their strengths are. I feel like I'm always diagnosing that. So, like, before I even, if there's an issue to be brought up, I'm like, okay, what is this issue? Is this because this is inside one of their weaknesses? Is this because, you know, this is exhausting them because this isn't what they're good at?
Hmm.
And I'm trying to look more towards their strengths. Is there some way that I could utilize this person in a different role? Or is there some way that I could edit their job roles to add a couple things that energize them, make them
Fill their
happy,
cup a little more.
and take away the things that, doesn't fill their cup or it causes exhaustion and allow someone else to help that is good at that.
Hmm.
So I think that I'm always kind of like when things aren't going like I would want them to, I'm always kind of like going through that in my brain. Like maybe it was my fault. Maybe I put them in the wrong role to start with.
Totally.
Maybe I need
Totally.
to change some of those things. So I think that's my first, what I go to first when something's not going so well. Um, but typically, I mean, a conversation goes a long way with that. If it's something that we've created like a little ladder for growth inside the clinic, and I go to them and I'm like, hey, I put you in this ladder because I feel like these are your strengths. And then I go to them 3 months later and they're like, I really am not enjoying this. And I'm trying to get good at it because you want me to do it. But I'm not naturally good at that. A conversation will allow me to kind of change gears and re, you know, move them around to something like I was telling you about. But then sometimes you have those conversations and uh, they're just not keeping up. And so
Yeah.
at that point, you've got to decide, are they hitting my minimum standard? Are they
Hmm.
hitting our minimum standard for our company to still be successful? Or are they not? Are they a fit for this team long term or are they not? So I guess I'm kind of repeating my answer to the last question, but I feel like a conversation piece goes a long way with getting their body language and their emotion and their tone to figure out, because chances are, if you're not happy with what they're doing on performing, they may not be happy either. And they don't
Totally,
want
100%.
because they feel like they're letting you down. And so having a conversation about it gives them free leeway to air it. And it's
Yeah.
not complaining, it's not giving up. It's just saying, I know that you wanted me to do this. I just don't think that I'm the right person for this job, or this doesn't fit my wants and desires. And I'd say that 90% of the time, that's probably the case. You're only talking about a performance issue maybe 10% of the time. And at that point, maybe the fit's just not right for
Hmm.
you or for
Hmm.
them. And that's
Hmm.
nobody's fault. We just got to find a fit that is. That's still your job as a business owner and as a boss to, if that person doesn't align with your growth and with your company's growth, is to find them somewhere that it is, even if it's with a different company, even if it's in a different role.
Yeah.
I'm still in charge of you. Um, I'm still responsible for you. So even if it's not inside my company, I'm going to make a vow to you when I hire you that I want what's best for you as well. And if this isn't it, I'm going to help you find that. So I think that a conversation goes a long way in figuring out the underperformers, whether it's that they just don't fit here or I just need to utilize them in a different way.
Hmm. I want to share a few things with you, and see if you've ever heard of this. Have you ever heard of the momentum formula? I had an executive coach, I guess probably like 3 or 4 years ago, and he shared with me the momentum formula, right? Because at the end of the day, you're trying to create momentum through your people, right? Momentum creates traction and traction creates outcome, right? Right.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at my notes is why you see me peeking down. So the momentum formula is vision, motivation, roadmap, and capability, right? So really it's another way of saying that might be like vision, motivation, policy, skill, right? So vision is they need to understand the goal. They need to clearly understand what the ideal outcome is, why it's important, and what it looks like, what it feels like. They need to be able to describe it and see it in their head the way close to the way you do,
Hmm.
right? So if I go up to your team and I'm like, "What's the goal?" and they don't describe it to me exactly the way I see it, that's on you. That's the owner.
Right.
Because what that will look like from your team is confusion.
Right.
I'm working real hard. I got the skill, but I'm all over the place. I'm not beamed in on that goal,
Right.
right? Second one is motivation. Are you, and that kind of picks up where you were, right? Like, is your team even motivated? Is this person even motivated to do this? Do they want to do it? And are they intrinsically motivated to do it? And do they feel like the support and compensation level that they have is enough to inspire motivation to do the thing, right? And if they're not motivated, that will feel more like resistance from
Hmm.
them, right?
Yep.
They'll be like, yeah, but they're just not quite willing to sacrifice for the thing,
Yeah.
right? Which is different than vision, which is
Right.
different than confusion, right? So if your team is exhausted because they're working so hard, but they're still not hitting the goal, it's probably not a motivation issue, right?
Right.
Third thing is roadmap. So roadmap is like, do they have a very step-by-step policy and procedure that is easy to follow and creates predictable outcomes? If they don't have that, I just don't know how to do it. That feels like a waste of time. Like I'm just wasting my time. And then lastly is capability. Do they actually have the skill? Do they feel like they have the intrinsic skills that will help them experience the result they're looking for? And you can create a simple questionnaire for somebody to be like, do you understand? Like just create a simple questionnaire that helps you become more diagnostic on which one of those might be missing for for you to be able how for you to be able to kind of understand like where can I allocate my energy and resources for this person or this team in a more effective way to support them? Because it might not be a motivation issue, it might not be a vision, it might just mean your SOPs suck. You know what I mean? Right. And I have found myself leveraging that momentum formula to help me be more clear as an owner. And so for those of you that are listening, hopefully that is helpful for you.
Yeah.
I want to add one more thing. One thing that also has helped me, especially with new grads, because new grads specifically, they tend to be a little bit more emotional, right? And when I think about growth in life, like think about growth in a career, growth on a team, growth in as a father, growth in your faith, whatever it is, growth is when it comes when you at some level, it's a series of decisions and trade-offs, right? It's like I'm going to sacrifice this thing so that I can get more of this thing. Then I'm going to sacrifice this thing so I can get more of this thing, right? I'm not going to sacrifice more patient. I'm going to sacrifice moving off the floor and not treating so many patients so that I can focus on working on my business. It's a trade off, right? And I see a lot of younger employees hitting a wall because they're not willing to make the trade or they're not even realizing what trade they're trying to make, right? I'm going to give you an example. How many times have you worked with a new grad who feels like they have to document an entire freaking essay on their notes because they feel like if I don't do this, somehow I'm not a good person or somehow I'm going to get audited, whatever.
Yeah.
And they end up sacrificing their mental health, their personal health, their bandwidth, all the things.
You're right.
And so it's like, what if we could let that go and decide like, this is a trade that we're willing to make? There's this standard that is at some point that the standard that you have in your head is going to become the bottleneck, right?
Right.
But if you let this go just a little bit, look at what it opens up for you, you know?
Hmm.
And so I also found success and breakthrough with team members when I'm able to understand what they're trying to grip and what they would need to let go so that they can grow.
Right.
And that helps me become more diagnostic as well. So um, hopefully that was valuable.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool, man. Running a little shorter on time, but really enjoyed the conversation. So as you're growing these companies, we'll end up with one more question.
Hmm.
Well, two more questions. As you're growing your companies, because you got you got a few of them, five, six of them, whatever you got, right? Where do you feel like and maybe we've already answered this question, but where do you feel like you need to improve or get better at so that you can actually become the person that can kind of grow these companies?
I guess we've answered it a little bit, but I
Yeah.
feel like kind of what I was talking about earlier when I feel like the policies and procedures make up, 70% of the workday. For me, that feels like a win because, a majority of the day is whether it's treating patients, they know, when you graduate from PT school, you can probably treat a total knee. So they know that part, skill part's there. Now it's time for me to teach them how to strategically document, how to make sure that I have taught them between the 8 minute versus the midpoint rule.
Yeah.
Like you just work through which patients can I see more than one in an hour with, which ones do I need to stay one in an hour with. So it's my job to create a repeatable policy and procedure that they don't have to do thinking for 100% of the day because that creates exhaustion. So I think for me in any business, whether it's therapy or whether it's whatever business it is, I need to create policy and procedure that 70 to 80% of their workday is systematic.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm helping with maybe me or someone right below me is helping with the other 20% to create more systems for that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that can always improve. I think that we could, I think that in a lot of businesses or in my therapy clinic, it's called a practice for a reason. You're always practicing.
Sure.
So I think that if you're not fine tuning your systems and your policies and your procedures, then you're probably going to fall behind because there's everyday efficiencies that are being created,
Totally.
whether it's your EMR or whether it's AI or whether it's virtual
Uh-huh.
assistants, like whatever you can utilize to create more efficiencies. I absolutely think you should. But you've got to create enough alignment with whatever team you have to systemize a lot of their day and then try to create vision that they're thinking similarly to you. And if there's ever an issue that needs to be addressed, you address it right then with love. Um,
Yes.
so I think that I can always improve on that. I think that I can always be looking through the businesses that I'm a part of and figure out if there can be some more things that can be systemized and then feeding into my team so that they start, even when it's not systematic thinking, they can start thinking like an owner. Even if they're not an owner of a business, they're an owner of that job.
Yeah.
So they start thinking like the owner of that job.
Yeah. I've learned that boring repetition and systems leads to leadership and vision, not the other way around.
Hmm.
People that we're trying to develop, right?
Right.
So like when you're
Right.
developing your people, it's like just follow the checklist and shut up for a little while.
Yeah.
And
Right.
then after a year, once you can breathe this, then we can talk about dreams. Or
Right.
like, does that make sense? And
That's right.
if you try to do it the other way around, it gets messy, you
Right.
know? Awesome, man. Dude, awesome conversation. Super deep dive into leadership.
Yeah.
I know I had another question, but I'm gonna save it for the next episode. Little bit of a
Okay.
teaser. I appreciate your time, man. We'll circle back like maybe end of Q2 and we'll do another one. We'll kind of catch up.
Sounds good. Thanks,
All right,
brother.
brother. Be
Have
good.
a good day.
Yep.
Bye.